Praises and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Ha Rakah Kodash. Double honors to our apostle elders, which rule great millstone well, and shalom to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. May you endure into the end. Shalom wa abba babal. Alright, so I was watching this from Kim Iverson. It says Ted Walter is the executive director of the International Center for 9/11 Justice, which is this guy here on your screen. He was in NYC on 9/11 and began studying the subject more deeply since 2006. You can find his organization's website here, which on here, when you go to the video of Twin Towers, which this is his website, you go to the Twin Towers, right? They actually show you the explosions taking place as the building falls.
For a wide zone, not in a floor-by-floor sequence that might be explained by pancaking collapse. Notice there are explosions far below the point of collapse. Some are isolated and focused. These are often referred to as squibs and are commonly seen in controlled demolitions. However, this is not a standard controlled demolition. The building is being progressively destroyed from the top down by waves of explosions, creating a huge debris field. The destruction is in waves, not just in one wave. Most obvious is a rapid sequence of explosions,
which you could see, that this is actually being demoed, okay? Which, I grew up in a construction family myself, and I knew this was demolition because if you know anything about construction, all right, a car, or even a car, if you run a car into a concrete wall, which one's gonna win? The car is gonna lose. All right, the wall is gonna remain. Most of the time, it's not gonna even budge. But then a building like the Twin Towers, you had the Twin Towers collapse, and then they even had that World Trade Center Building 7 collapse, which they said what it was thermite, right? Which he tells you in here that they try to stop him from investigating, but they did find thermite, and every time they researched the debris, they found thermite, all right, evidence of thermite, and thermite burns very hot, okay, because on these buildings, the buildings had an exoskeleton, like an ant, right? You know how the shell is on the out, like a crab? So it was even a stronger building, these World Trade Center buildings, all right? They had a very, very strong, they were the strongest building at one time in the world. It says right here, How Stuff Works is the website. It says, how was the construction of the World Trade Center unique? Long before the World Trade Center became synonymous with the most damaging terrorist attack in U.S. history, it was a symbol of engineering brilliance. Upon its completion in 1973, the two towers that rose from the 16-acre complex consisting of 7 different buildings in Lower Manhattan were the tallest structures in the world, but the construction of such mammoth structures had its challenges. The first major challenge was the building site itself, right, where they built the buildings. The location selected for the project on Manhattan's Lower West Side had been built upon generations of landfill that had actually grown and compacted on itself so much that it had extended the Lower West Side of Manhattan to the Hudson River. To reach a soil base of bedrock, workers had to dig down 70 feet, right? Pretty much 70 was it 7 stories down. But because of the proximity of the river, a barrier needed to be created that would keep the excavated section of the city from filling with water as fast as the earth was removed. Right? So they did a lot of things to build these buildings. They're special, right? Let me see here. It says right here, there were two main factors that greatly distinguished the two main towers of the World Trade Center from anything that had been built before them: their walls and their elevators. Prior to the construction of the Twin Towers, skyscrapers were designed to support themselves through large internal columns spaced about 30 feet apart, which interrupted the flow of the interior space. For this project, however, the engineer came up with a different solution. The exterior walls themselves would support the bulk of the structure, and they would get a boost from one single column of beams in the center. This allowed for much more open plan on every floor of the building, which not only had aesthetic value but had financial worth as well. The more floor space, the higher the rent the building's owners could collect, right? So when you understand that they made the outside of the building the like an exoskeleton, it was super strong. Now I gave you an example of a car being demolished by hitting a wall. So it tells you here a typical commercial passenger jet flies at a speed about 400 to 500 knots, pretty much 460 miles per hour to 575 miles an hour, right? And even if it wasn't, say 100 miles an hour, right? While planes are not built to take impact like a car, as you can see what a bird could do to a plane. All right, which I hit a bird with my car recently. You know these birds, they were eating the insects low to the cars, and I was driving and he just smacked the hood and it threw his ass up real high up in the air and he hit the ground and died. And I looked at the car and there's no damage. But look what birds do to planes, because planes are not built, as strong as cars. Cars are built to take impact. All right. All right. So it says right here on Car Scoops, what happens when you crash a car into a wall at nearly 100 miles an hour? And as you can see, majority of the building remains. The majority of the construction, the concrete remains. All right, and they just put this here temporary. Just think if it was built to be permanent, it wouldn't move, right? You see a couple blocks fall over there. But if they were to make it permanent, it would have not even budged. The car would have became like a pop can, right? So how much more a plane that gets folded by a bird hitting it gonna hit exoskeleton, one of the world's strongest buildings, an engineer, what they say, brilliance, right? An amazing thing done by these men that create these buildings, right? They do it through architecture, and then they go and make it happen through the construction, right? They build a blueprint, a model, and then once they built it over and over enough times, they know where every bolt was going to go. They know what the cost is going to be. They know what how long it's going to take, how many men. Some jobs I even been to, they even tell you, we know how many men are going to die on this job, because they've done the math so many times over, right? They could calculate it over down to pretty much literally how many men are going to die on that job, right? So these Edomites blew up those twin towers, all right, the so-called Caucasians, because it was under their watch, all right. And that man that I showed you, he's revealing that the only ones that could have done this was the military of the United States, right? Even the businesses that have the ability to use their might, that's a small amount of people, all right? Certain businesses, and he said the majority of them is going to be government, all right? So he was saying that the government of the United States of America had part in the destruction of the Twin Towers, including the Tower 7 that was burned by thermite, and it caught fire, and they claim it burned to the ground, okay? But in fact, it was all set up because they get rich off of destroying people's lives. The so-called white man, the Edomite, the wicked, they get rich destroying people's lives, okay? Once again, this is his page if you want to go see it. It's International Center for 9/11 Justice. All right, and they just got a group of people that are going in and saying, this shit don't make sense that these planes drop these, buildings that were built on a superior level than any building in the world. All right, and I got the scripture on hold here. It says in Psalm 7 verse 16, his mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. Let's see what that word pate is. Pate. Pate. It says a person's head. So the judgment of all this destruction that the so-called white man has caused and all these lives that he has destroyed, right? Whether it's in wars, whether it's in the lack of resources, whether it's in murder, all right? Just like they murder babies in their abortion clinics, all right? And I'm talking about Israelite babies because the Lord only cares about Israel, starting with the elect. The Israelites are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, which have been scattered throughout the world in slavery. And I actually worked with an Amalek. All right, he was a terror. He looked like a black Puerto Rican, but his dad was Jewish. And he told me, his family being Jewish, they worked in the World Trade Center. And he told me that his uncle was told not to go in that day of 9/11. And he said the only ones that were left working, the majority of them were minorities, which are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, which have been scattered throughout the world in slavery. All right, which it tells you right here in this deaths in World Trade Center, terrorist attacks, New York City, 2001. It tells you here that of these, let's see. It says of these 2,726 descendants, 1,659 were non-Hispanic white males, which a lot of, you got Jake that look like so-called Caucasians, but in fact are Israelites. 407 were non-Hispanic white females. 177 were Hispanic males. 81 were Hispanic females. 136 were so-called black males. 79 were so-called black females. 122 were Asian Pacific Islander males, and 54 were API, which I don't know what those are, but you could add the the Hispanic, the blacks, and even some of those Asian islanders as Israelites, and even some of the so-called non-white non-Hispanic whites, I would actually say are actually Jake, okay? Because the Jake are the hated, all right? The so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, which been scattered throughout the world in slavery, all right? Because it tells you right here, a total of 2,158, 79% descendants were born in the 50 U.S. states, right? So in the United States, 79% of the people that died in the World Trade Center were from the United States. All right, it says, including, it says, a total of 21% descendants were born outside the 50 states, including the United Kingdom, India, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Japan, by place of residence as reported on the death certificates, all right? Which, you know that Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, that Jake is from there. And you have Jake amongst the United Kingdom and India, and including Japan, which they come here, right, being guided to their destruction because America, okay, is Babylon the Great, who are to be destroyed. And this was just an omen of what was to come, because the Edomites that controlled the world, they've been given a great sword, and that great sword is going to be used, the nuclear missiles, on America, okay? Which, that's why they're allowing, the southern borders to be wide open, because they're welcoming all these Jake in here as a trap, all right? And they're going to nuke America, all right? And their tongue is falling upon their own head and stuff like this, with this Kim Iverson video of shocking truth about World Trade Center number 7 and Twin Towers, right? You got these scientists and archaeologists, and he said there's millions of different forms of scientists looking at this 9/11 project, and they're all saying that it's not, adding up to two planes hitting it and then falling down on itself. They're all looking at it from different angles, saying that this had to have some kind of intervention of man to cause this much destruction. Okay? Alright, it says in Psalm 64, verse 8, so they shall make their own tongue fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. Which these are Edomites that are telling on Edomites. When you look up that video on YouTube from Kim Iverson,
them into those buildings.
That man looks like a so-called Edomite. He's pretty saltless too. So I believe him to be an Edomite, but he is one of the experts that are speaking on this 9/11 justice, right? That's his website, the 9/11 Justice, International Center for 9/11 Justice. He's an Edomite telling on the Edomites. And what he says is the only ones that could have done this was America, the government of America, right? You had a foreign army working there under your nose, planting devices that are going to destroy that building. And then they move so quickly to hide everything from the public so that there is no chance of testing the materials. And then another thing he points out was all the bodies. They've never even found the bodies. So what I just read to you is an estimate of what they believe died in there, because what he explains was just like that building is being demolished by the explosions, the human bodies that were in it were literally evaporated, turned into tiny little particles, right? Just like that concrete that's harder than the body is becoming dust. So the humans that were there, their bodies were obliterated to nothing. So they can't even tell you who was really bodies, if they ever found whose body or who, right? But then you had the evidence of other buildings that have fallen, and you find, he says, you find an arm, a leg, a torso, a head, right, in the rubble of destroyed buildings. But in these buildings, you find nothing, not even dead bodies, because they were evaporated by the destruction that took place. So the devil's tongue is falling upon his own head, right? Because the Lord is angry with the wicked every day, right? And the Lord's revealing this devil's shame. The devil being the so-called white man, the Lord's revealing his shame before the world's eyes, and it says, "All that see them shall flee away." They're gonna separate themselves and eventually nuke America, right? With Putin, right? You had this what do they call them? Where they go in there and they try to take over. I can't remember the term they use. A coup? Yeah, that's it. A coup, right? There was a coup in Russia funded by America, they said. See, that's what a lot of people are saying. See, after a Russian coup attempt, what happens next in Ukraine? Now they're saying the Wagner coup was staged by Putin, which I don't doubt that, but it was all paid by America. Because America at the same time had millions, if not billions, go missing. And you had this this Russian coup leader. Let me see. America funded see right there, 6.2 billion. See it? Now, of course, they're going to try to say they didn't, just like they do in 9/11. U.S. intelligence knew Wagner was planning insurrection weeks ago. They funded it, all right? Nothing happens by chance in politics, all right? It's being funded and controlled all the time, okay? So this is why the nations are going to despise the whore America, because America is the problem, and really the so-called white man, his entire race is the fucking problem. But this devil, the so-called white man of America, the world's tired of him. And they're going to destroy him with the nuclear missiles that they've been holding, and they're going to use them against America. It says in Revelation 17, verse 16, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast," and they're being revealed for their mischief, and that shame is being put upon these so-called white Americans, and eventually they're going to destroy, these other nations are going to destroy America. It says, "And the 10 horns, which are the European Union kings, which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore." The whore is America. They're going to hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, kill her citizens, burn her with fire. How? Through nuclear missiles. For Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai have put it in their hearts to fulfill his will. So the Lord's going to control them and have them do this, okay? He's the one that gave them the technology for the destruction, and he's going to use those weapons against the so-called white man, the red devil, and that's going to be with the Americans. All right. Now the other nations are going to gather together with their armies and their troops in the valley of Jehoshaphat, and they're going to be melted there. They're going to be destroyed. All right. So that word hatred in that verse,
Strong's G 3404, Messiah,
Miseo, to hate, pursueth, hatred, detests. So he's going to hate. These other nations are going to hate America, which they already do. And they're going to strike America with nuclear missiles. Look right here. Europe's anti-American itch. Right? Why the Americans hate us? It says the simple reason is that Americans think Europeans are incapable. It says the crisis of an American power, how Europeans see Biden's America. EU predicts hate speech laws coming to U.S., which there will be a famine of the word where we're not allowed to go preach Yahweh Shem Shai. All right. It says right here, Europe realizes the U.S. cannot be trusted. See, does the EU hate you? Hate who? The U.S. Survey after survey shows that negative feelings towards America, the U.S. policies have soared. Only 36% of Europeans, for example, pretty much America. All right, because they're going to be part of that hand that helps destroy America, according to biblical prophecy. The European Union is going to help Russia destroy the whore America, Babylon the Great, who are to be destroyed, which America is being revealed for its mischief, being the devil, the deceivers, right, which they deceived the world, saying that the Messiah was a so-called white man, but in fact he's a so-called black man. And even Putin knows that. He showed images of a black Jesus, right? And America keeps pushing this white Jesus, but it shows you that they're not on the same page. Okay, they're against each other, even though they are the same people, just a different country. These countries that Esau occupies are going to be used, their military, against Babylon the Great, America, who are to be destroyed because Yahweh and his son Yahushai have put it in their hearts to fulfill his will. All right? That's why it's going to be done, because Yahweh said so, and Yahushai controls every man on earth. That authority has been given to him by Yahweh, so that's how it's going to play out. He's going to control the hearts of these heathen, and they're going to destroy America with the nuclear missile.